Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Carolina Weather Group. We are happy to have you. This is the Wednesday, October 17, 2018 edition of the Carolina Weather Group, show number 252. And tonight we welcome Miss Sandi Duncan. She is a managing editor for the Farmers Almanac, and we're going to be talking about the Farmers Almanac. I know a lot of folks buy their copies every year. I have one right here, and it's a very popular publication. And tonight we're going to talk about the history of the Farmers Almanac, just how they get those weather predictions and other fun and interesting stuff that they produce. So this is a live broadcast tonight. So for those who are watching on our Facebook Live and our Periscope and our YouTube page, if you want to interact with us throughout the show by sending us questions, please feel free to do that. We'll be monitoring those different streams, and we'll jot down the questions, and when the time fits, we'll throw those questions in. Or if you're listening on our podcast later on, or if you're watching the YouTube rebroadcast, we will let Miss Sandi send out her information towards the end of the show, or the Farmers Almanac information on how you can get your questions sent to the folks there. So again, this is show number 252. We're talking about the Farmers Almanac tonight. And we were just joking before the show started. This is actually our first, seems like, normal show that we've had over the last month or maybe even 6 weeks with the Hurricane Florence and then Hurricane Michael. So we are going to cover maybe a little bit of that. So we're going to do some tweets of the week later on in the show. And we can maybe cover some recovery from Hurricane Michael. But before we do that, let's bring in some of our panelists. I will let you know that Ricky Matthews is working tonight for his chief meteorologist at WCYB, so he will not be here, and James Bryerson's on baby duty, so he may be slipping in a little bit late. But let's bring in Mr. Chris Jackson, who is in the Columbia, South Carolina area. Chris, I know it was a busy week for you last week. It's kind of calmed down a little bit this week, huh?
Yeah, absolutely, Scotty. And, hey to everybody. I know I missed the show last week. I was actually out in the storm, trying to chase the tornado threat as Michael moved up into South Carolina. Chased for about 14 hours last Wednesday. Ended up chasing 3 storms, all tornado warned. I think 2 of them did produce tornadoes. Got within 2 miles of one. And the forward speed was just absolutely incredible. Driving 70 miles an hour, the storm over a period of 15 minutes or so gained on me by two miles, even with me driving 70 miles an hour. So yeah, I mean, thankfully we missed a bullet for the most part in South Carolina. There's some little isolated problems, especially in the Irmo area, Kinley Creek, Whitehall neighborhood. They experienced a lot of flooding in 2015. So they had a few issues Thursday morning as Michael, really, I guess, made its pass over the middle of South Carolina. But, going forward, the weather's been great. The last couple of days have been awesome. Going into this weekend, it's going to stay, pretty nice. I think Friday night into Saturday, probably going to be looking at a decent chance of rain showers ahead of the coldest air of the year. Coldest air of the year with the Arctic cold front that's going to approach on Sunday. And I think Sunday night to Monday, probably going to have some lows in the mid 30s to low 40s. And then, looking out into the future further than that, by Tuesday, it's still going to remain below normal, but I think temperatures going to moderate a little bit by Wednesday, get back into some normal conditions. But, I know it's nice to dry out here and have a few really nice days where there's really low humidity. But, it's been a crazy couple of weeks. Glad to have a little feeling of normalcy back. But, kick it back to you, Scotty.
Thank you for that, Chris. It feels good to be back to normal and get kind of more on a normal routine. Well, let's bring in Mr. Jared Smith, who is down in the Charleston area. Jared, you guys enjoying some good weather, but it's still pretty hot down there. We were talking about that earlier.
Yeah, we've been in, we had a nice little tease this weekend. Summer took a weekend off. It was gorgeous. But it finds its way. It's a transitional season, and things tend to heat back up again. And we've had a couple more 90-degree days, and so that takes us to 6 90-degree days at the airport this month. Today we got to 90. That's never happened before. The most we've ever had is 5 back in 1986, and so we blew past that today. But that's it. There's a cold front making its way south. It's going to be it's going to be rather different tomorrow. The forecast high from the Weather Service is 71. We bottomed out at 76 this morning. So it's going to feel a lot different in the morning, to put it mildly. It's going to feel a lot different tomorrow. I think most people are ready for that. There's a few people who want eternal summer, and it's just like, okay, well, just keep burning some of those fuels and maybe we'll have that. But in the short term, we are going to still be a little bit on that roller coaster. We're going to peak back up into the upper 70s, 80s to start the weekend, and then back into the 60s. So we're issuing a sweater weather watch for the Charleston area for the end of the weekend. So I'm really looking forward to it. They're out, they're ready to go, Scotty.
Well, we too are looking for that cold weather to move back in here into North Carolina. I'll talk about the Piedmont and the foothills and mountains for a little bit. We're expecting, we've had a cold front move through today. Tomorrow we're going to see temperatures in the low 60s. Like Chris was talking about, we're going to see another cold front move through over the weekend that could give us some rain showers on Saturday. And then the coldest air of the season moves in on Sunday, where we could see highs even in the Piedmont staying in the upper 50s. And then Sunday night into Monday, potentially the first frost or freeze throughout North Carolina. And I also forgot to mention Saturday night with that northwest flow, some of the higher elevations in the mountain counties of Avery and Mitchell and Watauga and places like that could see the very first snowflakes fall for the season. So it is getting that time of the year where we're transitioning from the warm season to the cold season. And that also means that our tropics is kind of transitioning. And with that, I'll bring in Shay Gibson with our tropical update. So Shay, I know it's been pretty busy for you, but it looks like we can finally take a little bit of a breath here as things have calmed down a little bit.
Yeah, that's right, Scotty. It looks like there's a lot of upper shear all around in the tropical belts. The monsoonal belt in the main development region off of Africa across the Atlantic is pretty quiet. The Gulf is quiet. All the areas are pretty quiet. The Western Caribbean as well. So it looks pretty good. It's really nice to be able to share this screen right here, especially after everything we've gone through with Florence and Michael. And now we're in a transitional period. Now, I do want to say that this time of the month, we still are in sort of an upward spike. We're on the downward phase, but we still have to watch every tropical wave that's going on out there. And the season does not end until November the 30th officially. So we still watch, but for right now, everything looks really good. If we look elsewhere in the eastern North Pacific, there's a little bit of activity. So the Baja Peninsula and these areas of Southern California, Nevada just got Sergio, I think, made some pretty heavy rainfalls on the southwest United States. But we're watching these areas down here along the eastern North Pacific for any sort of development. As far as El Nino and La Nina, we start looking at the transitional phase of ENSO, or the Eastern North Oscillation, Pacific Oscillation. And so we define these as El Nino and La Nina, and those can have effects here in the southeast region as we go into the wintertime. And basically these values that you see right here, this is the main region, El Nino region, and you see the values are higher than normal. Once we get above 0.5 for a certain amount of period of time, they go ahead and designate El Nino as an occurring event. And so the synopsis is we are on El Nino watch right now. It's expected to form the next couple of months and continue through the northern hemisphere through the winter time with a 70 to 75% chance. What does that mean for us in the southeast? Well, this is from National Weather Service Tallahassee. This is a nice little picture that sort of sums it up. We tend to have drier with temperatures often above average for parts of the Northeast, even the Appalachian Mountains down here along Florida, increased chances for severe weather. So we have basically with El Nino, we get the subtropical jet that becomes a little bit more active just across the northern Gulf and up across portions of the Carolinas here. So we may see higher than normal precipitation. This doesn't mean that we're going to see more snow events. It means we could see snow events like in a year, but the moisture trade may be enough to allow for more of those events to come close to occurring or to actually occur. It's really too early to say right now, but just know that El Nino is a high probability right now to occur. And with that, I think that's it for the tropics, and just kind of looking forward as we get to the colder season of what to expect. And I'll pass it back to you, Scotty.
All right. Thank you for that report, Shay. We certainly appreciate that. I was looking at our Facebook Live comments coming in. But I do want to bring in Sandi Duncan. She is joining us from the Farmers Almanac. Sandi, thank you so much for joining us. You're up in northwest New Jersey. So How's the weather up there? Is it a little chilly?
It is finally, just as the Farmers Almanac predicted. It's a little chilly, sweater weather for sure. In fact, we had to turn the heat on the other day, but it's time. It's really time.
Oh no, when the heat comes on, it's getting that time of the year. Well, we certainly want to say thank you for joining us tonight. I know that you are probably busy out as the Farmers Almanac is out in publication. Before we kind of get into what you guys have produced for this year, give us a little history of the Farmers Almanac. How did it get started? What is the history behind this great book that's been published for a long time?
Sure. Well, our Farmers Almanac actually started back in 1818 by a gentleman by the name of David Young. He was a poet, an astronomer, and a teacher. He was in New Jersey, actually, and he decided to put out a Farmers Almanac. But I want to back up a little bit before that. Farmers Almanacs were actually in existence for since probably the early 1600s. In fact, they had some in Europe, and when they came over, the colonists came over, they started a need for some type of publication. Mostly you would print Bibles and you would print an almanac. So there was actually hundreds of Farmers Almanacs. Many of them were very local, many were very regional. So pretty much it gave not only the weather and the times of the sunrise and sunset, which was really important for the people back then because they didn't have any other way to keep track of things. But pretty much they were in existence. So there's really no Farmers Almanacs became kind of a type of publication. So our Farmers Almanac, and there's a few other ones out there that have similar names, but ours dates back to the 1800s. And it's really been a guide not only for farmers, but for people who want to live, grow their own food or plan the weather. But ours has been around for 200, and this is our 202nd edition.
That's really cool information. Obviously, the Farmers Almanac is something that farmers use to help know when they need to plant things and foods and stuff like that. Do you maybe on a yearly basis, do you guys consult with maybe a group of farmers or something and ask, where can we help you out more? Or is this just something that you guys kind of have a routine and just keep doing every year?
Well, it's interesting because, of course, we have the name farmers in our title. And then a lot of people think, well, I don't have a farm. I don't need the almanac. But really, if you look back, and it's really kind of cool, if you ever come to Lewiston, Maine, make sure you guys stop by. We have a museum of all our old editions of the Farmers Almanac. And then we also have some copies of almanacs that were called Farmers Almanacs. And some of them are like this big. They're like tiny. I don't know how they read them. And some of them are very medicine oriented. Some of them are very like the snake oils of the time and day. But while we were called Farmers Almanacs and we were really named after the people of the time, hardworking, honest people, farming has come a long way in 200 years as the Farmers Almanac. So even though we call it Farmers Almanac, we're not just for farmers. There's a growing trend, what you guys are talking about, to be kind to the earth, to be a little less, leave a little less of a footprint. So we've kind of go with the times. So while we still offer planting and gardening information, I don't think we're so much more for farmers as we are for the average person. There's a lot of people that have a little porch and they want to grow something on the porch. Or there's a growing trend of people that have a garden, pretty big garden, but they want to go more natural because they're kind of afraid of all the things in the that get put in food these days. So they want to go more natural kind of lifestyle. And that's kind of our niche now. I think, we do have a big rural following, but we also have a lot of people in the city that follow us as well.
Miss Rachel Coleman joining us tonight. She says her 98-year-old grandmother swears by the Farmers Almanac. So I've heard a lot of people say the same thing. But like you were talking about, you don't always, you look at the farming stuff, but you also have other things of interest, like you said, astronomy and things like that, maybe homemade remedies and stuff. So kind of talk, before we get into the weather discussion, kind of talk to us a little bit about, for maybe those folks, younger generation who has maybe not looked at a Farmer's Almanac, what all do you guys do in the book?
Sure. And I like to point out, too, that like you said, and it's really nice to hear that your grandmother used to read the almanac. But, a lot of times your grandmother was your age when she started reading the almanac. So we're really for everybody. Like you mentioned, we not only have best days to go fishing, we have our gardening calendar, we have our weather predictions, but we have life hacks for less stress. In this year's Farmers Almanac, one of my favorite tips and it's been a popular one when I share it, is if you ever, I hate doing it to be honest with you, but if you ever want to wash windows, you know how you wash windows and then you see streaks and it's a pain in the butt to figure out where it goes? Well, you should actually, when you're washing the window on the inside, go horizontal, and if you're going on the outside, go up and down. So if you see the streak, you'll know which side the streak is on, and you can fix it. So we have all kinds of little tips like that. We also have a recipe contest every year, and this year the upcoming recipe contest is for recipes for quinoa. We also have a lot of trivia and did you knows, and we have some gardening information. Like this year we have tips and ideas about how to garden if you don't have a lot of property, how you can perhaps do it on your balcony, or you could do it on your deck, or just somewhere outside and not have to have a whole acre of land or something to that effect. This year, we also have a fun story about, what did people use before they had toilet paper? It's quite an interesting article. It's quite enjoyable. It's a lot of trivia. So we have a little bit of everything. And before we went on live, we also talk about one of the most popular features of the Almanac for years, hundreds of years, has been our Best Days calendar. And what it is, it's actually based on where the moon is in the sky, because a lot of people believe, including a lot of farmers and gardeners, that the moon has a pull on the soil. So it really depends on where the moon is, whether you plant above ground crops or below ground crops. But there's also these best days calendars, which talk about best days to cut your hair, best days to mow the grass, best days to wean your child of a bottle, as well as the best days to quit smoking. So that's always been a popular feature. We don't guarantee those days, but people that follow them say they get the best results possible.
Well, Sandy, that's an interesting. I was going to ask you about that with the moon phasing, with lunar phasing and nightshade vegetables. What does the Farmers Almanac say about those, like squashes and some of those nighttime ones?
I don't know the actual formula that we use, because I don't actually put the formula together. But if you look at the Farmers Almanac, we have this planting and gardening calendar that talks about things, when to plant things above ground, below ground. And then we also have a month-by-month gardening calendar at the end. Of course, it's where climate permits. That talks about different things to do on the. It's more towards the farm, because some of it's like, dig root crops, transplant or kill weeds, that kind of stuff. And it's just, there's really a strong belief that depending on what phase the moon is in will kind of affect how well your garden is. And in fact, talking about the best days, I had a guy call me years ago, and he apologized proficiently about how his father and him were digging post holes. And his father said, you have to follow the Farmer's Almanac, the best day to dig post holes. Because I guess according to the formula, there's a best day when you dig it, and if you want the soil to fill in or you don't want the soil to fill in. So they followed the almanac at that time, but his father had passed away, and he needed to know. And he apologized. He's like, I'm a pharmacist. I don't really believe in this stuff. But when we tried it, it really did work. So it's really kind of interesting, and people do follow it for a variety of things, including even best days to buy a home or get married.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. I mean, I'm looking through one that you sent us. Thank you for this, by the way, because potty training for children. There's just all kinds of really neat little tidbits in here. So thank you for sending these to us so we can look through them.
Sure. Yeah, it is. Like, it has a little bit of everything. And we also have puzzles and brain teasers. And this year we have trivia about each of the 50 states. They were kind of interesting. And it's kind of fun for me, too, as I edit. I kind of learn something every day, which is kind of enjoyable as a job.
It's funny. Oh,
nope. Go ahead, Scott.
I was going to say, as you were talking about 50 state facts that you may have never heard of. I thought that was interesting for our South Carolina folks. I was talking about archaeologists unearthed artifacts in Allendale County along the Savannah River, suggesting humans inhabited the area for more than 20,000 years ago, long before the Ice Age. So these are just very fascinating facts that are in your book. For North Carolina, it's White Lake is called the nation's safest beach for its clear water, sandy bottom, and lack of dangerous currents. So just a lot of interesting facts for the Farmer's Almanac. But one thing that you guys are synonymous for is giving these yearly outlooks with the weather. And so before we maybe kind of dive into what we can expect maybe for our region here in the Southeast, one question that I had is, and you have a nice little write-up about it. You're in the Farmer's Almanac. If you have this year's edition, it's on page 140. it kind of talks about how you guys predict the weather. So, Sandi, I was hoping that maybe you could kind of dive into that a little bit and kind of talk to us about how you go about the process of getting these yearly forecasts.
Sure. Well, like I said, our Farmers Almanac started back in 1818, and our founding editor, David Young, he actually came up with the formula that takes things like sunspot activity, tidal action of the moon, position of the planets, and a variety of other factors into consideration. And he kind of came up with these rules. So when these things happen, he associated certain weather patterns towards it. Now, fast forward 200 years, we fine-tuned the formula a little bit, but we still really rely on this formula that started over 200 years ago. The formula itself is only known by one person. He is a real person. He goes by the name of Caleb Weatherby. That's a pseudonym, but he is a real person. And he's been doing the weather now for us probably about 30, 35 years. So he uses this formula. He changes it a little bit, but it's a very astronomical and mathematical formula. And, you know, we do our best to kind of give people an idea of what might happen 6 months to 12 months. Actually, each edition of the Almanac has 16 months of weather in it. So it's really become valuable for people who want to prepare for the upcoming seasons and see what we predict.
And so with that, you guys, obviously, in this day and time, there's all kinds of rigmarole on social media and stuff like that. So, but you guys have really, you know, even the doubters, you know, there's doubters out there, but you guys, like you said, your forecast overall is fairly good. Do you have like a percentage rate of you guys, how you verify the forecast? Is there a process that you do that?
Well, because we do the whole country, and then we also have a Canadian Farmers Almanac, so we also offer weather predictions for the provinces up in Canada. We can't really keep track. I mean, we do in every year's almanac, we kind of give an overview of how we did last winter, because that's the big season, obviously. And then we kind of give a summary of what we're predicting for the 4 seasons ahead, and then we break the country into 7 zones, and we give the forecast for the upcoming year. On our website, we also have at farmersalmanac.com, we have an on-the-money kind of growing list of when we predicted some storms, possibly some hurricanes or big snowstorms. In fact, I always like to point out one of the biggest wins in the past several years is when, and I'm sorry because I can never remember which year, but there was a year that the Super Bowl was held in New Jersey in February. And when the Almanac came out, we had said that there might be a snowstorm, and how the Almanac predicts the weather is 3 days at a time. So it was like February 2nd to, I forget, it was 5th to the 7th, 4th to the 7th. And we said that there could be a snowstorm that could affect the Super Bowl that was being held in New Jersey for the first time in a long time. So the day of the Super Bowl was in between. It was that second day of our 3-day weather forecast. And it wasn't too bad. It was actually kind of mild for the storm, the Super Bowl itself. But that night, a couple hours after the Super Bowl, a snowstorm happened, and it was very hard for a lot of tourists and a lot of players to get back home.
Yeah, I know last year for the Southeast, along the coastline here, we had a pretty major snowstorm here. And the Farmers Almanac got that right. That was a big buzz. And it got a lot of people going, wow. I mean, I remember seeing all over social media, people were like, man, they nailed it. That's pretty cool. I think, let's see, Super Bowl. I was trying to look that up to find out what game that was. That was played Super Bowl
2014.
Denver Broncos. Yeah, Denver Broncos and Seattle Seahawks. Were yeah. So for those watching who are sports fans, I do have a viewer question. Now, this is kind of a 2-part question because they're asking about the Farmers Almanac and the old Farmers Almanac. So the question here from Andy Gary, he asks, why is there such a discrepancy in the winter weather predictions between the Farmers Almanac and the old Farmers Almanac this year? And so basically, I want to sort of you to explain to the viewers what these 2 products are and how they may differ, and then maybe why the weather predictions differ there too.
Sure. Well, as I mentioned, since Farmers Almanacs really date back more than 200 years, as I mentioned, there was a 1600 Farmers Almanac in Back Bay, Massachusetts. The courts pretty much have deemed that nobody can own the rights to the words Farmers Almanacs because it kind of represents a type of publication. And I kind of associate it with kind of like how many newspapers are called the Something News or the Something Times. It's kind of a similar kind of way. So the old Farmers Almanac is out of New Hampshire. Our Farmers Almanac is out of Maine. They've been around since 1792. We've been around since 1818. So we're pretty much 2 of the oldest and most consecutively published almanacs out there. we're both Farmers Almanacs in that we predict the long-range weather forecast. We have gardening information and fishing information, but we do also differ on a variety of other editorial. We do a little bit more of the trivia and the natural remedies and the earth-friendly kind of tips. And we also, we not only have a retail version of the Farmers Almanac, but we also have a promotional version of the Almanac, which businesses buy. It's a smaller version. There's no ads inside, and they kind of give it away as thanks for coming in to our store, and they can customize it on the front cover. And that's really been our niche more than even the retail side. So that's kind of the difference that way. And ours is the orange cover, orange green. No, and theirs is yellow. Why there's such a big discrepancy? That's a good question. Obviously, we don't use a similar formula. Our formula is proprietary. We use mathematical and astronomical information. I can't speak to what they do and they use. Sometimes when we come out, it's very similar, but this year we are very different as far as what we're predicting for the upcoming winter.
Cool. So what are you saying? What is the Farmers Almanac saying for the Southeast this year? Folks are asking, what's the winter outlook?
Well, overall, we're saying that it's going to be teeth-chattering winter ahead. And for the Southeast, we're pretty much saying not quite as cold as some other areas, but we are saying a very chilly and wet winter on tap, which means a lot of wintry mix. And in fact, when you look ahead at our forecast, very cold conditions, February 12th to the 16th. Excuse me. So if you want to get away, that's when you might want to book a trip out of the Southeast. But we're saying a very wet and very chilly winter on tap.
Interesting. Yeah. For us along the coast, anything that keeps the gnats and mosquitoes and anything that walks, bites, or flies that stings or bites is good with us. Back to you, Scotty.
Thank you, Shay. You know, Sandy, you were talking about earlier, you guys divide the weather predictions into 7 different categories to kind of associate with the United States. How did you go about, or could you describe how you went about classifying these states together as to, you know, which area is Section 1 or Section 5 or whatever, Section 7?
We did really rely on Caleb Weatherby, our weather forecaster, to do this. And he, you know, if we did forecasts for each state, the book would be really too big. And because we go out on a limb and we really give this long range weather outlook, we had to break the country into zones. So zone 1 is like from Maine down to almost, we recently changed some of it. Excuse me. So we really had Caleb look at it because he is the weather expert on our team. So the Southeast, I'm just going to remind myself because we changed it recently. It's West Virginia, the Carolinas, Georgia, goes over to Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, and Florida. Obviously, your local conditions could come into play, and we always like to say that we don't take over your local meteorologist, but we do kind of give people an idea of what's to come in your neck of the woods. Excuse me. Coughing now.
Yeah, totally understand.
Totally feel you there. I've been coughing myself.
There's a if you want us to carry on the show for just a minute, there's a mute button up there at the top. If you want to hit that for a minute, that's fine. We can elaborate a little bit more on the Farmers Almanac here. But yeah, lots of great information. And I'll tell you, there's more than just weather predictions in the Farmers Almanac. We want folks out there to know that they're not all about the weather predictions. There's much more to offer. And as Sandy has explained, there's lots of components to it. And they have their own formulas for things, their own editing staff, their own writers, and own material. So really, really good. It's good to have both products out there, but the Farmers Almanac seems to be, it seems to have a little bit more depth to it. Like you said, some of the more earth type content with it.
And so yeah, go ahead, Sandy, go ahead.
One of my favorite stories this year, too, is about cutting back on plastic. You know, everybody's on the straw. How we should get rid of straw. We all talk about styrofoam, and we'll talk about those coffee pods. So we have a great story in this year's almanac about 5 plastic items to stop using.
Sandy, you were talking about your staff, and Shay was there for a minute, too. Obviously, this is a national publication. Talk to us a little bit about the inner workings. How many staff do you guys have there? What different groups or maybe different parts of this do you guys have there at the Farmers Almanac?
Sure. Well, we have about 5 people on staff full time. We depend on a lot of freelance writers for a lot of our stories. You know, as everything, the Almanac is now on social media. We're on the web. So we have a lot of work, not only in the print edition, but also just keeping up with content and keeping up with social media. Excuse me. So a lot of people work out of Lewiston, Maine. But we have a great team of writers, freelance writers, and we have a great team that work on digital media, social media, and we have a graphic designer. We have proofreaders. It takes a big team to get this all together.
Wow, I would have thought more than 5 folks, would have been full time. That's for all that you guys do. That's amazing to think about. Just looking through your October predictions here. Right now, October 16th through the 19th, you're talking about a pleasant spell of early fall weather. That is definitely what we're having, the 20th through the 23rd. Talking about a quick hitting rain maker moving through the area, which is what we expect this weekend. So your forecast there really really jives with the current conditions here. You said wintertime is a big draw to the Farmers Almanac. But your summertime as well. Do you guys get a lot of buzz about summer as well, or is winter kind of the big draw?
Winter seems to be the bigger draw, but we do, of course, we give the forecast for the entire year. Oh my gosh. So the summer is another one that gets a lot of publicity. And good news, bad news for you guys. We are saying the 2019 Farmers Almanac is saying we're calling it sweltering with a lot of thunderstorms for next summer for your area.
That doesn't hurt my feelings at all because I love the heat and humidity. The panelists will tell you that. I guess we're almost 8:50 here, so I want to keep you just a couple more minutes. But how long does it take you guys to? I know you've got 2019 in publication, and we briefly talked about this before the show started. You guys are already starting on the 2020 version, correct?
Exactly. That's why I can never remember what year we're in, so don't ask me what year.
So how long does it take? How long does it take to get all the material together and to get everything ready to go for the next edition?
Sure. Well, we actually have the 2020 predictions in-house. I don't have them. I haven't looked at them, and I can't squeal, but they're in-house already. So we'll start putting it together now, but it goes to press in June, and it comes out next August. So it's a long process, but like I said, on our website, farmersalmanac.com, we always have new content. We have new content on our Facebook page, on our Twitter page. So it really takes a lot to keep it going, but it takes probably a good 6 to 7 months to actually put the almanac together.
Wow. I know we kind of talked about this earlier, but we have a few more guests joining us throughout the show. Melissa Griffin, a good friend of ours, she was wanting to know how you guys, again, determine the different regions that you forecast for.
Yeah, like I said, Caleb really did it for us, and we kind of just grouped them together based on what we see as far as weather zones. I don't, off the top of my head, I don't remember how he actually did it, but we see what makes the most sense. Sometimes if you're on an area that you're kind of close to another region, we say, feel free to look at that region. We have all the regions in one almanac, so you should kind of take it. And like I said, we do our best. We don't guarantee our weather, but I don't know anybody who can guarantee their weather. And people sometimes give us a little more slack because we're going out on a limb and giving predictions for up to 12 to 16 months ahead. So the zones are kind of based on what we thought were best for our forecasting.
That sounds good. Well, I know we're about 8:50 here. Chris, do you have I seen you unmute yourself. I didn't know if you had a question or not.
Yeah, I got one quick question. Just kind of curious, demographics wise, where do you guys, I guess, sell the most copies of the Farmers Almanac? Based on, I guess, current today's market versus like the past. I mean, any kind of trends you guys see where I guess you just sell more copies.
The Northeast is one of our big regions. The Southeast is actually a top seller, as well as the Great Lakes Midwest area. And that's where the weather is, if you think about it. So we do sell nationally, but those would be our top 3 areas.
Awesome. Yeah. Just like I said, kind of curious because a lot of, I guess, the older generation you talk to, especially in Southeast South Carolina, the Midlands where I'm from, a lot of people swear about the Farmers Almanac. And, just like Scotty just pointed out, your current forecast isn't too shabby.
Thank you. We try our best. And Texas is also a big online. We have a lot of Facebook followers from Texas.
Well, as we kind of wrap up here because we're reaching the top of the hour. If folks want to learn more about the Farmers Almanac, I know you've talked about the website and the social media platforms. I'll give you this opportunity to maybe tell folks how they can keep up to date with you guys and maybe how they can, I don't know if you can pre-order the 2020 edition or maybe how they can go about acquiring editions later on in the coming years.
Sure. Like we mentioned, at farmersalmanac.com is our website. We have a store. You can do a 3-year subscription, or you can sign up for our weekly e-newsletter, totally free, but you can keep up with content and weather, all kinds of fun stuff, home remedies. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. So if you want to just check out farmersalmanac.com, there's a lot of information and ways you can follow us.
And if we have a business owner or something watching tonight, is there a way they can maybe contact you about advertising, or do you guys
Sure. Yeah, I mean, at farmersalmanac.com, it's all kinds of contacts, but if you ever want to email me also, it's just sduncan@farmersalmanac.com.
All right, Miss Sandi, we certainly appreciate you being on tonight. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we kind of transition off the show tonight?
No, just that watch out for Christmas. It might be rainy, and that middle of February, I'd be very careful. It's going to be really cold.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Sandi. We appreciate it. And maybe we can have you on next year as the 2020 edition rolls out. We can kind of uncover what to expect over the Southeast then.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Sandi. We appreciate it. That's Sandi Duncan. She is the managing editor for the Farmers Almanac. And go check them out, farmersalmanac.com, or follow them on social media. You can get the latest information. And guys, I know in our community, sometimes the Farmers Almanac or the Farmers Almanac gets thrown around a little bit, but at least looking at the October stuff, pretty true to what we've experienced. So with that, we will transition to, I know we were talking about Hurricane Michael just a little bit. We do want to get tweets of the week because we haven't done that in a long time. But Chris, you were able to pull up some footage or some old archive photos of the Florida coastline and then kind of do a comparison to what it currently looks like. And I don't think we've really had a opportunity to discuss the dynamics of Hurricane Michael here on the show. I know we did a special show Wednesday night, and Thursday night I think we were all so tired we just kind of just zoned out for a little bit and just took a night off. So this is our first show back together talking about this, but this was a Category 4 hurricane, Chris.
Absolutely.
You know, sometimes I'm not even saying so. A lot of times when we're talking about hurricanes, we're talking about the water aspect. And we did have the storm surge aspect with Hurricane Michael. But I feel like this is the first time in a very long time that we actually had to deal with the wind aspect, those damaging winds from a hurricane over a long period of time. And some of the photos that you've seen, Chris, we really saw Category 4 damaged winds down in the panhandle of Florida. Uh-oh, you went mute, Chris.
Sorry about that. Technical difficulties. But anyways, yeah, I started a couple nights ago downloading some of the raw imagery NOAA provides. After I think it's every storm since like Isabel in 2003, I think it was. Don't hold me on the year of the storm, but I know it was like 2003. So basically every hurricane since then, you can look at the after images and really high resolution. So that's something I've been working on for the last couple of days, really hard. I'm going to share my screen here just so I can show you guys kind of what Scotty was talking about with some of the before and after. I got Mexico Beach, Florida pulled up here, and you can see the before and kind of get a feel for it. Small beach town, probably something along the lines of, Folly, maybe a little bit bigger scale than Folly. Not a whole lot of big buildings. I think there was don't hold me to this also, but I think there was a local ordinance in town where you couldn't have any buildings over 3 or 4 stories. So not a lot of, big time commercial development like we see in the Grand Strand, especially in Myrtle Beach. But just to zoom in here, I'll go down here to the area around 24th Avenue. There's 25th Avenue. Here we go. And just for example, this little area right here has really caught my eye on some of the post-storm imagery. You can see this big forest right here, right where my cursor's at. And, this is, probably pine, live oak, stuff like that, stuff you normally see, coastal areas or right off the beach. But here, I'm going to pull up the after image. And here is the same exact place. And, just analyzing it, it's absolutely remarkable to see the damage, just how widespread it is. Storm surge is one thing, and then you got Cat 4, Cat 5 winds on top of that. So, who knows what the final numbers are going to be as far as storm surge, but 8 to 10 feet possibly, maybe more, with 150-mile-an-hour winds on top of that, sustained with higher gusts. I mean, that's like an EF3, EF4 tornado damage right there. I'm looking at and some of that's almost EF4, EF5 damage because there's literally nothing left. And that's probably, mainly to do with the wind. But just looking inland, like that same forest is littered with debris from all the homes that it destroyed, on the beach. And
I remember that from Hugo in '89 here. And it was like that here, where just the surge and the winds just drove it as far inland in the estuaries and marshlands as possible. It was insane.
And go ahead, Scott.
Chris, I was going to say, and you have been out on the plains chasing tornadoes, and I know you've had the opportunity to visit Joplin, and as have I. And I wasn't there on that May afternoon in 2011 in Joplin, Missouri, but I remember seeing photos, and I remember going back to, I was back in Joplin just a few years ago, and I can only imagine, I can only equate this wind damage to those of Joplin and Moore, Oklahoma, these EF5 tornadoes that just ravaged those communities and nothing left. And I look at these images and they're just very eerily similar to me. This is EF4, EF5 tornado damage on a widespread scale. With tornadoes, the damage is in pockets of places, but this is widespread, and it's just fascinating to me that this is, I think, the first image that a lot of folks are seeing of what wind can really do when we get these powerful storms to move through.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, the power of water is one thing. You get 8 to 10 feet of water that's just coming in. And I know I've checked the Twitter feed of Mark Sutta, amazing hurricane chaser. And I think we're going to have him on the show coming up. But, he said what he saw was really incredible. He's never really seen before. He equated it to it, basically storm surge being injected by like a jet engine as it came on shore. There was no wave action. I actually saw some of his video, and there was no wave action. The only thing I can probably hypothesize with that is there's just so much velocity pushing the water. There's no chance for it to get any kind of chop or any kind of wave. The wind's just blowing that hard. I mean, but like you said, this is EF4, EF5 tornado damage. I mean, all these places right here, there used to be houses. I looked at this area last night comparing GIS data, and just this little area that I'm sharing my screen right here, there's 2 homes that remain. One is right here where my cursor is, and the other is up here. I didn't really count the multifamily stuff because it's just built differently, but all these homes in here are gone. I mean, they're absolutely gone.
Yeah.
And looking at the before. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Scott.
I was going to say, what if you to get right up about this with building codes and some of these buildings being older before codes were strictly enforced. And so going forward, it's going to be a real question of resiliency for the coastal areas and how they're going to rebuild. But one thing I wanted to address with these pictures is the death toll. Now, I know it's an uncomfortable topic, but it's an important topic as well. The last I looked, we were at up to 18. Is that number still there, or is it higher now?
I think it's pretty close ballpark. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That last I saw, I haven't been checked in too hard today. And like I was saying with this little general area right here that I was checking, the other night I was doing some GIS stuff, and where my cursor's at right here, this little side street that goes down to where this house used to be at the end from let me zoom back in here, sorry. From basically where my cursor is all the way to the left to the waterfront here, there was 39 homes. Of those 39 homes that were there, there's only 2 left. and one being right there and the other being right there. That home was built in 1965. That home was built in 2012. The average year of those homes construction that were demolished was 1971. So the building code was quite different then. And, I'm going to keep digging at it just to, try to get a scope of, basic large scale, some of things to really try to put together, what we can do better from communication, forecasting and stuff like that. To, people that really need to know this, when storms of this magnitude happen, because, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to say this, but if you're along the coast and one of these houses are destroyed, your chance of survival is very slim. And that's just something that we need to communicate. It's not, I know it's a sensitive topic, but it's not overhyping, sensationalizing. It's the fact.
No, you're right. It is a real deal. With this storm, there's no overhyping it. It was going to be catastrophic either way. The best words you could get out there were to emphasize how severe it was going to be. I mean, really, that's all we could do. There was we had to take the gloves off on this one. It was just a bad situation all the way around.
Yeah, and I can remember from Charlie in 2004. Charlie was, I can't remember exactly. I think it was either a high-end Cat 2 or low-end Cat 3, and it went through rapid intensification as it approached the Fort Myers area down in Southwest Florida, and it was basically Cat 5, right at Cat 5, just like Michael was at landfall. And seeing these storms, how they intensify so quick. It's happened before, and it's going to continue to happen. And what's really maybe stood out to me more than anything is we always talk about the models. None of the models had this thing at 919 millibars at landfall. I know 2 days before landfall I saw 940, and I kind of chuckled. But looking back on it, it's like, wow.
I was looking up the death toll. The USA Today's latest article, which came out at 5:30 this afternoon, has the death toll now to 33.
Yeah, thanks, Melissa. She just sent me a message also. Melissa Griffin from over at State Climatology. Yeah, 33. It's awful.
So that is 23. 23 folks from Florida died from this, and then the additional 10 from different states, which 3 of them were here in North Carolina, and I know there were several deaths up in Virginia from the flooding. So, but guys, looking at this, and we're going to get to tweets in a week in just a second. The some of the mainstream media, they talk about this come without warning or whatever. We've heard that jargon numerous times, but in all honesty, Michael just over the weekend. Last weekend was a tropical depression, and then it made landfall on Wednesday as a Category 4, almost 5 hurricane. Michael developed pretty quickly, and Shay, you talking about rapid intensification. This storm really went through that, and we can only really contribute that to a favorable environment. But the Gulf of Mexico, those waters were really warm, and that helped fuel the storm.
No, you're exactly right. NHC barely had this coming as a hurricane at 5 days. As time started to go on, every 12 hours, we were seeing the numbers going higher. We saw, a hurricane with potential Category 1, higher Category 1, and then 12 hours later, we see a low-end Category 2. Another 12 hours, we're seeing, high-end Category 2. And all of a sudden, it's major hurricane within 3 days. And, there's a lot of factors to that. First of all, upper shear in the atmosphere, a lot relaxed. Once it got north of the Western Caribbean and out of that upper shear environment, then the vertical stacking was allowed to really grow around the storm. It took a little while. It took quite some time to get a closed eye wall right before landfall. So there was at least one quadrant that was open on that eye wall, mainly the southwest quadrant. But when it moved north in between Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula, it moves over what's called the loop current. And the loop current is an ocean gyre, which is a constant spin motion, and it's constantly turning the waters there. It's also the warm water conveyor belt for the Gulf Stream, the beginnings of that, which come around the south tip of Florida. So you have a lot of warm water coming up from below and coming to the top, which is constantly, it's constant feed of surface waters. We call those thermohaline currents. And so you have that going on. There was a little bit of cool water upwelling in the northeast quadrant of this ocean gyre, which for one night, the wind stalled at, I think, at about 110 miles per hour. So we kind of got, I would say we kind of got lucky there, because if it had continued to increase rapidly on the wind speeds, we probably would have had a Category 5 at landfall. But that's pure speculation. There was a slight cool area of cool water upwelling along that northeast quadrant of the loop current. But once it got to the north of that, those waters were unstirred, untapped for pretty much the entire summer. We really didn't have anything. Usually we get storms that come across or cold fronts that drop down and sort of cool the waters and churn them up, or some direction of wind that will do that. But the water was very warm. You're talking 82 to 86 degree water. That's very deep. So you're talking 200-300 meters deep. So that was a major source of fueling for the storm as it lifted north out of the upper shear environment over warmer waters. And there you go. Once that eye wall started to close off there in the last 24 hours and really get a core and a secondary wall, that was it. I mean, it blew up. So yeah, very unfortunate. But the NHC forecast tried to tune every single day. There was always this thought that there was going to be a rapid intensification process. We just weren't sure to what degree. And that's a topic of great study right now in the tropics discussions and tropical studies, for that matter. So, you know, it's a constant science being learned from. And the thing is the word was put out, you know, plenty of time for folks to know that there was a storm coming that was going to be of some great magnitude. Even in Category 1, we've seen Category 1 hurricanes, even Florence had made landfall. What kind of impacts could that have? The only good thing that we had going throughout the storm is that it was going to be on the move. It wasn't going to be a stalling storm. So we're lucky there. But it sure did a huge footprint of damage from that panhandle of Florida all the way up through the Carolinas and even parts of the mid-Atlantic region.
You know, Jared, I think it was that Tuesday night or something after we did our show, you and myself and I think Chris, we watched the 11 p.m. advisory come in, and we were just at awe as Michael was approaching the panhandle, just how it continued to gain strength so close to the coast. Normally we see the opposite.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. But again, as Shay said, man, those waters were deep. They were warm. And it had nothing stopping it. Again, you know, when we were watching the landfall on Wednesday, I had AWIPS 2 up with the geostationary lightning mapper up, and we were seeing lightning strikes. We were seeing flashes all within the eye wall right up to landfall, and then even a little bit afterwards.
Yeah.
And it did not stop. Mm-hmm.
I mean,
you got to remember to mention the mesovortices, and that's a big word to throw out here to the viewers. But mesovortices are basically swirls within the eye wall. So normally you think of an eye wall as just being this round sort of wall of clouding and winds that are all going in a specific direction. But then what you get is, as the storm is intensifying rapidly, it's undergoing rapid cooling aloft, and the thunderstorms and the updrafting are to such a degree from the surface up through the middle that you get swirls around the sides of the eye wall, and then the eye wall becomes entrained with these things. And so these little mesovortices really pack a punch. They actually can show wind gusts much higher than the sustained winds of the actual hurricane numbers, and that does a lot of shredding and ripping. Those spawn a lot of large-scale, fast-moving tornadoes right under the eye wall right there along land, which is probably the majority of some of the damage is done down there right around that eye wall, and there's mesovortices that are just rotating within the eye wall and tearing things up.
Yeah, Shay, I have it up on my screen. I have it up on my screen. If Shay, if you want to kind of highlight and talk about the mesovortices, we seen this kind of like a pentagonal shaped eye for a little bit, and that's what you were talking about.
Right. Yeah, I could. I don't know if Jared has a second to, or maybe Chris. One of the 1 minute goes imagery shows that really well. I can pull that up in a second. But what you're seeing there is a rather asymmetrical eye wall. What it appears to be. Now, on visible satellite, it looks rather symmetrical, but you can see the bulging inside of the storm with those mesovortices. Now, what you don't see are singular rotations going on around that eye wall. But just think of this thing as a wobbling band of tornadic or rotational activity within straight line winds, constantly running, aiming down. The winds are basically just coming right down to the surface, blasting everything in its path, and then you get rotations within that. So each one of these little bulges is a mesovortice that is really just doing a lot of damage. Now this, I think this was before landfall though, right? Yeah, I can barely see the outline of land. And this is also an eye wall replacement cycle stage right here that you're looking at. So some of that can just be tuned to the eye wall trying to restructure itself, and maybe not so much of the mesovorticity action, but there is, I think Chris has got it up right now, and you can see that better on visible satellite. As it got closer to land, this really stood out more, and you can see it here. I've got another one that shows it a little bit clearer, but the eye wall is a little bit tilted at this point, but you can inside of that there's individual rotations going on. So it's a really unique feature.
Yep.
It shows very powerful winds going on. That's a sign of a very powerful hurricane or a super typhoon in the Western Pacific.
And I wonder if we can get the imagery of the scar that it left, because I know that there was some questions over whether that was just a well-placed cirrus cloud or something like that, but it was confirmed. It left a 30-mile wide scar in the Florida Panhandle. Now, tornadoes leave scars all the time. We're used to that. But this thing left essentially a 30-mile wide tornado damage scar in the Panhandle. Just really just mind-blowing when you see this. And that, again, that just owes itself to the power of this storm. And, you know, and we neglect South Georgia at our peril, because Tallahassee was issuing extreme wind warnings all the way into Southwest Georgia for 110-mile-an-hour sustained winds.
Yeah, Jared, I got it pulled up right here. This is all the post-storm imagery, but I mean, where my mouse is at, you can clearly see it from, you know, Mexico Beach all the way in toward Overstreet, and just that streak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's something that we're used to seeing in Joplin, in Greensboro.
Absolutely.
And this time it's a much larger scale.
So let's see. Let's back it up. Here's right there at landfall. You can see those things swirling around the eye. Back it up and do it again. There's a singular loop there. I don't know if it's going to work now. Murphy's Law.
Yeah.
I can tell you guys something I'm actually kind of curious in to see the final numbers. I'm just curious how much forest is going to, you know, be totally destroyed from this, because, you know, just like I still got the screen share up here, and just seeing so many. I mean, everywhere you look, all the trees are broken, and one of the crazy things is, I'll share this one image of this neighborhood here. This is in Callaway, just like southeast of downtown Panama City, but you see this neighborhood here. And most all the homes have taken some kind of damage, roof damage, but all the pine trees are snapped. You know, they're snapped 10, 20 feet off the ground. You can see kind of, let me see if I'm finding you guys are really good. Kind of right here, you see these shadows. And just in the shadows from what's standing left of the, you know, the trunk versus the rest of the tree that's just been snapped, you know, 20 feet off the ground, laid over. You know, that's really incredible to see.
I remember after Hugo here in Charleston, it was the first time I'd ever seen the sun set on the actual horizon through trees, because they were all matchsticks, and you could just see the sunlight going all the way down. It was pretty intense. But yeah, so I know we're starting to get towards 9:15, Scotty. I'm not sure what you guys want to continue on Michael, but I could go ahead and do my tweet of the week, which is right on target.
It's a good segue.
Yeah, good segue. So this is one of the, in fact, let me go back to this one. This is Mark Sudduth. We talked about him earlier. He's going to be coming on our show in December and talk about his experience down here. Now, this is one of the pictures he took. And he said somebody's wind tower, weather flow, did not make it. So US 98 east of Tyndall Air Force Base. And you can see this. This is a deployed weather observation tower. And this was deployed by the University of Florida in partnership with our company, Weatherflow. And we strategically put these out just ahead of storms. Once we get a good idea where the eye is going to make landfall, usually within probably 12 to 16 hours. I mean, we have to wait until we're absolutely sure. We did it for Harvey and got some really good eye data. This one was going to be dead in the eye to be able to get some really good data from it. However, you see what happened to it here. It's laying across the highway, bent up and torn to shreds just about. This is what it looked like before. This thing's about 40 feet high. It weighs 6,000 pounds. And here it is. So the funny thing is, look where it's positioned here across the highway. And look where it's positioned here, about 50 to 60 feet away from the highway. So you can see that how powerful the storm is when it's able to blow a weather station, an observation tower like this, 50, 60 feet to the north during an east eye wall wind. So that again furthers or suggests that those mesovortices, or that rotational track around the eye wall, is something to be dealt with. And that just being able to throw something 6,000 pounds all the way over there across the highway and destroy it is just another testament to show what the homes went through and all the structures there.
Definitely so. And kind of correlating with the Michael theme, Jared, do you have yours pulled up?
Yeah, I do. I sure do. So this comes to us from Waffle House, which, FEMA uses Waffle House as a determination of how bad a disaster is. Waffle House closed in Panama City, but they were not down very long. They rolled in their food truck, and this one corrects the address, but this is incredible. They roll in their food truck, free food to help out, help people out, help them as they recover, and I just love this hashtag: scattered, smothered, and recover. Like, isn't that cool? Like, Waffle House is so cool. Like, that was always a treat growing up, and like, they're just, what they do for storms. I mean, they have a whole storm center. I think we've used that as a tweet of the week before on here. They have a whole storm center. They monitor this very closely, and they have meteorologists on staff. Easily the best meteorologist job ever. Sorry, National Weather Service. But I mean, this is just cool. Like again, this is so many things you hear, about, you might hear about malfeasance or anything like that, but this is a pure example of good right here. And they just pull right in front, and it's like only the S is left. The rest of the sign is blown out. But they pull up, and they're serving people, and it's really fantastic. Love stuff like this. I hate that it happens, but they're ready. I love this kind of preparedness.
Yeah, their sign looks like something off of Wheel of Fortune.
That's true. Well, a little teaser there. We might be hearing a little bit more about the Waffle House Index, as it looks like maybe beginning of next year in January or something like that. We're gonna have some folks on from the Waffle House to tell us all about the Storm Center and what they do for communities before and after storms. So I was really excited to receive that email today from Pat Warner, who is with the Waffle House. So Pat said, I'm still in the Storm Center right now. We're covering from Michael. Let's talk next week and get something on the books. So we are looking forward to having representatives from the Waffle House on our show, hopefully in the next couple of months. So that is exciting. Chris, I see you have yours pulled up, so we'll go to you.
Absolutely. So my tweet of the week's going to come from guys base hunters chasing, Scott Peak and Colt Forney. Big, huge fan of them. Definitely a huge fan of Colt because of his photography, as you guys can see here. But, they were down and, chasing Michael. And this was taken from Tyndall Air Force Base. Colt shot this, 14 millimeter wide angle shot, standing right in the middle of the hurricane, the eye of Michael, full sunshine. And as he says, we heard thunder a couple times in the eye wall and could hear the roar of the wind around us. A very surreal experience. And I think this is around Highway 98 that goes down toward Mexico Beach. But I mean, just look at this. It's absolutely gorgeous and deadly. I mean, it's just so many things all wrapped into one.
I saw, I'm sure you guys have seen it as well. And probably a lot of folks who are joining us tonight probably seen the video floating around on social media of the guy who was taking a kind of like a selfie video in the eye. And, I've always said I wanted to be in the eye of a hurricane, but I don't think I would want to have been in this eye.
Now, they also said, in another video, one of the storm chaser videos out of Texas, really intense video of them showing them in the eye wall there in Panama City, and stuff had already cracked up, broken their windshield. They were getting nailed from behind. They were just sitting ducks out there, and just shrapnel going by over 100 miles per hour, just flying by them. And one of them actually said during the feed, my ears just popped. So pressure dropping significantly from the outer eye wall to the inner eye wall down to 900. It bottomed out at 919 millibars. That's really, really low. That's the third strongest storm to hit the United States ever, based on pressure alone. So that's significant, and that's what happens in the eye. I mean, the pressure is the lowest it can be. It's and it was really strange. There's no wind, and so you have really calm winds and sunny skies. pretty eerie.
Yeah, I mean, to follow up on that, Shay, like we look at these storms, like, you know, I saw a lot of those videos too, and I shared across my first personal Facebook page. And a couple of my friends be like, "Oh, that's a doctor video." You know, they sped the video up, and it's like, no. I know these guys. These guys are legit. You know, they're using professional equipment. That video is not sped up. It's just, you know, I don't know if we've had a hurricane this intense since social media became what it is today, and technology. You know, you take your iPhone and record 4K video with it. So, you know, just seeing that kind of technology with the hurricane, I just don't think we've ever seen before. So, and maybe you know, some of these videos, while dangerous absolutely to capture, can be used in the future to help, you know, people prepare for, you know, the kind of impacts they may see from these strong hurricanes.
Yeah. Mark Soto he does a pretty good thing with GoPros, and he just straps them to a really strong structure and gets that video feed and tries to get somewhere safe. But Josh Morgerman is one to follow for those guys out there. He goes right into super typhoons in the Philippines and you name it, Thailand, and anywhere that he can get some strong feed. I mean, there's some extreme chasers out there, but I think some of these guys that came in from Texas and other areas to chase the storm, I think they were pretty scared, man. I really do. They sounded like it. I
would have been. No bones about it.
Yeah, this is not something that you can just drive away from and be okay. I mean, this is not just it's not a small point on a map. It's not a small tornado. It's not a small mezzo. It is you are in it. You are in it until it's over. There is no driving west, east, north, or south. And honestly, I mean, watching some of these chaser feeds, it's a miracle none of them got killed.
I'll second that, Jared. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad everybody's okay. And, you know, yeah, when you chase, you take risk, and, you know, that's all part of it, and whatever you feel comfortable doing within reason, I guess. But, you know, I'm really surprised no one got injured. And thankfully, you know, like you said, chasing a tornado across the plains is one thing, because, you know, as a chaser, you always have an out. You always have like 2 outs, really. And, you know, just that way you don't get in any kind of trouble. But, you know, with a hurricane, if you're going to chase a hurricane and want to see the eye, you've got to experience it. I mean, you've got to get in the middle of the hurricane. You've got to go through the eye wall. And with this hurricane, like we were talking earlier, and let's say EF4 and EF5 damage along Mexico Beach, and, you know, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, and I don't think we haven't had a hurricane in the social media era. We did have Harvey. I mean, Harvey was the first major of the social media era last year. That one made landfall at night. So you didn't really get to see the full impact of it, but we haven't had one like this in a very long time. And I hope we don't for a very long time, because I don't wish that on anybody.
And this is a neutral. Don't forget, this is INSO neutral right now. So we're not in El Nino or La Nina. We're in the middle. So we still have yet to see what a full potential La Nina can do for the tropical Atlantic basin in the next few years, whenever that does occur. So, yeah, we'll see. I hope that we don't have a hyperactive season. This season definitely has seemed to pan out a little bit higher than normal as far as intensity and landfalls. So
only takes one.
Yeah, it only takes one, but we've gotten 2. So
yeah. Scotty, I think we got you. We got your tweet of the week up.
Yeah. So Chris was talking about Texas. If he wasn't following yesterday, another big weather story was the catastrophic flooding that happened just outside of Austin, Texas. This is from Brad Souter, who is a morning meteorologist there in the Texas area. There was a bridge that collapsed yesterday, and this was a main thoroughfare into Kingsland, Texas. So I'll roll the video here of the Lalano River and watch the water. And there you see the bridge just getting washed away. There was a comparison photo on social media. I didn't share because I'm not sure if it was if it was verified, but if it was showing the difference between the river yesterday and the actuality. And it was that river, if that photo was right, had to be up some 30, 40 feet above.
That's crazy, man. That was a huge surge. I mean, that's concrete and rebar being ripped apart there.
Yeah, yeah. So
Wow.
a lot of
Yeah.
flooding down in the Texas area. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, to add with that, Scotty, I've actually been over that bridge. One of my best friends lives in Round Rock, just north of Austin. I usually go out there in springtime, go fishing at Lake Buchanan and LBJ Lake, which is Lyndon B. Johnson, which is, it feeds Lake Travis, out in the hill country, and that's where that is. And I can remember actually driving across that bridge. That the water line is usually 30 feet below that bridge,
Yeah.
and then seeing it gone, it's like, wow. And I know one of my other friends I follow on, I'm trying to pull it up here real quick while we're on the subject. Trisha, she's a storm chaser out there and storm spotter with NWS Austin. But I know she tweeted earlier about Lake Travis. It had come up like 30 feet in 24 hours. And I just can't even imagine that.
Yeah, it was our friend Ashley Morris. I don't think her area was affected by this per se, but I know it was close enough that she had her eyes on it. So hopefully all the folks there in Texas are being able to recover from that. But again, some crazy stuff going on around the country. And one last thing about Michael, and we were talking about the hurricane season. And Shay, I think you brought up a good point about, we haven't even really been in La Nina yet. Last year, we had 3 significant hurricanes that their names were retired. I think it's safe to say that Florence and Michael will be retired. For us as a country, as meteorologists, where the hurricane season was fairly quiet, for a good amount of years. The last 2 years have really slapped us in the face, and it's kind of scary to see what may be in store over the next few years.
Yeah, it was definitely a little over 10 years, almost 12 years before any major hurricane made landfall since 2005. And so, it's not one of these things you say, oh, when it rains, it pours, it'll be over soon, and the cycle will be done. It really is indicative of things to come, not to scare folks or anything, but we're seeing larger events with higher amounts of rainfall and flooding. This was a combination of both. It's a good thing it was on the move, but these are the kind of things we got to look forward to, folks. I mean, we're getting some more powerful storms overall in intensity and rainfall amounts. That's almost a fact at this point. We're seeing it as time goes on.
Yeah, definitely so.
Yeah, Scott, if you got my screen up here, here's the pictures I was talking about from Lake Travis. I mean, that's 24 hours difference.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Some crazy stuff. Well, guys, we'll start closing out tonight's show. We appreciate you guys watching. A big thank you to Sandi Duncan again for joining us from the Farmers Almanac. As always, you can listen to the rebroadcast of this on our podcast or watch it on YouTube by tomorrow. Hopefully that'll all be ready to go. Next week, we have Rob Fowler joining us. He'll be our guest for, I think it's the 24th, October 24th. And then October 31st, we're actually taking a break, a much-needed break, I think, for a lot of us here. It's been a very busy 6 weeks or so. October 31st, obviously Halloween, so we're going to be taking Halloween off. But I do believe that we are going to have a special show that we recorded earlier this year, myself and Chris Jackson and James Barton was able to attend the Science Festival in Gastonia, and we were able to do some interviews with different guests. And so I think James is going to be premiering that on Halloween night. So we will have some content. We just won't be live. We're going to be off that night. And then we're going to November. As we look forward to that, we have some great guests coming on. Melissa is coming on to talk about Kokoros and the climatology and rainfall from the last 2 hurricanes in South Carolina. We're also going to be talking about the red tide that's been affecting portions of Florida. And I know we can bring up, how Michael may have influenced that and Tropical Storm Gordon. So some good shows coming up in the month of November. And then December, we are booking as well. Mark Sudduth will be on to talk about his chase of Hurricane Florence and Hurricane Michael. So some busy times coming up. But as always, we welcome your suggestions, either show topics or guests, and we'd love to reach out to them to book those shows for you. So for everyone here in the Carolina Weather Group, we hope you have a great weekend. stay warm out there. It's going to get chilly over this weekend, so it's going to be a shock to everyone's system, I believe. But we hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you back here next Wednesday night for another episode of the Carolina Weather Group.
Pumpkin spice, Uggs, and fires. Be careful, y'all.